Hello, 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 beautiful unicorns. Yana Kasperczak coming to you live from Ontario of Canada as your certified professional performance and spiritual awakening core energy coach. It has been my soul's purpose to help women, to help you get your shit together so you can break free from the mental prison you find yourself in and build a life, a business, and or a career that you're obsessed with. Okay, now let's all take a deep breath in and out, because today's topic requires quite a bit of that. And this is one of the things, struggles that I help a lot of women to work through and on. But it's the power of owning your story and embracing your past without shame. I'm going to start off with just acknowledging and validating quite a few of you in this community, in this Facebook group, Heal the Unicorn, Emotional Healing and Spiritual Growth for Women, and remind you that you're not alone with what you have been through, what you have gone through, and as challenging as it was, there is always a reason for it. And it doesn't always become known to what the reason is to all of us and for all of us right away. So some of you have been through unspeakable things, and it creates certain narrative and certain stories in your mind, and it becomes quite challenging when it comes to embracing life and embracing your past and healing without shame, without guilt. Without going too much into the stories of anyone, I'll give just a broad example. Now, all of us were children at one point or another. Some of us might still be children, and it's good to have that childlike approach and not necessarily viewpoint of life, but some perceptions and the way that we look and interpret things are great to still have that ability for all of us to see them and experience them through the childlike eyes. Now, all of us were children. All of us have gone through some things that had shaped us and to the women that we are today. Some women have gone through, like I said, unspeakable things at a very young age where their boundaries and their personal boundaries had been crossed, have been disrespected, and they never even learned how to set boundaries because that was never allowed. While others have been through all of us have been through some kind of trauma when we were young. So, and our parents did the best that they could. Now, granted, there are some parents that, for the lack of better words and explanation, and for the sake of time, so I don't have to go into too much explaining of what I mean by some parents, but there are parents who are narcissists, who are simply there to use others around them. And that means their children as well. Now, luckily, my parents weren't narcissists, but every single human being has narcissistic qualities. Uh, Hey Jessie Wood, how are you doing, beautiful? Good afternoon to you as well. So now, meaning that we've all been on the receiving end of someone who is bigger and stronger and much more intelligent, someone who we looked up to, who have, in our eyes, in our minds, in our stories, has done us wrong. Now, sometimes in some cases that might not be the truth, but in majority and in most cases, that is the truth. That is how our parents raise us, right? So the example would be, again, and I know my parents might be listening at some point or watching, and if maybe not, but regardless, we as parents, we do the best that we can, the best that we know of what works, what doesn't, how to help our children grow up and navigate their life. So, in my experience, when I was growing up, the way that I was sometimes punished was a smack. And there was one time I remember, and now as an adult, I understand why. And this is also, I also now understand more about forgiveness, and I continue to learn more about forgiveness, and really understanding that there are certain people, certain situations that we can forgive, and while others we cannot. And everyone's experience and everyone's understanding is going to be a little bit different, and it's up to the individual. So for me, I don't hold any grudges on anyone that has done me wrong. And this is not just with parents, this is also with friends through high school, through the corporate world when I worked for someone and I took the bribe of a paycheck. I've forgiven all those people because I understand they simply didn't know any different, and I know that they themselves would feel bad. Now, with others, it's not necessary. Or for some of you in this group, in this community, the things that have been done, the things that you have experienced are simply unforgivable. And I'm not going to go too much into that topic, into that conversation, but I just want to remind everyone. And this is where the post and the group has really come from, is just I've been this is the work that I do is so personal, and the things that women go through is so personal that it's not my place to even say or share. But now, with the things that I have experienced as a child, I had spankings. I used to be put in the corner. And there was one time when I was left being responsible for my sister, my younger sister, who's 2 years younger than me. And she wasn't as curious and as mischievous as I was, but I was curious and I was mischievous, and I would go and do my thing, and I forget that I was responsible for my sister. And then I came home, and where's your sister? I have no idea. I don't know where she is. So of course my mom is upset, scared, frantic, because now mind you, this was a different day and age where we didn't all know what was possible and what could happen to a girl and the missing girl. But long story short, I found her sitting under a bush and eating some green plums, I think it was. And she was really enjoying those green plums. I always love eating green plums. So, and then I brought her home, and then I got a beating of my life. And at first I was like, ha ha ha, doesn't hurt, laughing. And then as a parent, you're just trying to teach your child a lesson so they don't do this again. And, until I cried. So this is one experience that I've gone through. And things like that, then as a parent, you start to kind of apply onto your kids because you've learned that and it worked for you, right? Even though it didn't in many ways, even though it traumatized you or hurt you or pushed you away from your parents because you no longer felt safe, you felt violated in some ways, and you felt your boundaries were crossed, and this is one of the things that can cause children and then adults to not put boundaries in place because there would be a punishment, there would be repercussions. And so now as an adult, I did those things. I, not necessarily in that same way, but I would just tap my child on the butt and say, no, you don't do that. And I get that, even like with pets, sometimes we might do that. But a hand should feel like how do I put it? You should never fear the hand. You should feel safe with a hand when it comes towards you. And animals are a perfect example of that. So if you abuse your animal, and I know none of you do, all of you ladies are empaths in here, and empaths don't do that. That's more of the narcissists. But I'm using that as an example because with an abused animal, if you go like this and you put your hand up, instantly they would hide and they would be scared. They would be responding a certain way. Whereas the animal that has never been harmed or hurt, never had a hand lifted on them unless it was a game, and then you lift your hand and then right away the animal's like, oh, okay, are we ready to play? Okay, let's go, let's do this, right? So it conditions animals, and the same thing happens with humans. We become conditioned to our surroundings and our environments, which means that if we experience pain and hurt and the suffering from a hand, then isn't it fair to say that this is where it's possible that as an adult you might be uncomfortable with a hand or with touch or with essentially just with the hand, and the way that the hand would be like raised above you, right? You might instantly be triggered, kind of like that animal. Hey Barbara, how are you doing, beautiful? Rebecca says, I'm not able to watch live videos. I don't know why that's happening. I noticed you said that yesterday as well during the podcast, that it's not letting you watch live videos. Sometimes maybe it's resetting your phone or your device or the platform, where you can maybe even delete the app sometimes and reinstall it. Sometimes that helps as well. So I'm like trying to see, I don't really plan on the things I'm going to be talking about. I might have some few talking points here and there that I had jotted down, but I believe, and this is why I love live videos, where I just come on and I share whatever comes through. And then as it's coming through, I'm like, how does that make sense? How does that connecting? Now, as an adult, when it comes to you owning your story and you embracing your past without shame, there's certain experiences that you have gone through as a child, as a teenager, as a as a preteen, as a teen, as a post-teen, as an adult, whatever you have gone through, there's everything that you go through, everything that you experience, you create stories in your mind that shape you into the human that you are, that also help you in editing or rewriting or recreating your own personality of who you want to be. And I'm saying that because some of us can find ourselves in a place where we are awakening to who we are and who we want to be, and recognize that a lot of who we are and who we want to be is right now holding us hostage through those stories. And how can you tell? And it's quite easy to tell. You're just not moving forward. You're not doing these things that you say you want to do. You're not experiencing the things that you want to experience. You're finding yourself stagnant. You are self-sabotaging. You're procrastinating and you're avoiding. And maybe at this point, avoidance, procrastination, or self-sabotage, one of those or all of those are essentially your middle name. And I speak from my own personal experience. I did that for years. And it wasn't until I started to understand the stories that I was carrying in my mind that were holding me hostage in my mental prison, where I just felt like I couldn't get out because I wasn't understanding what those stories were. And when I started to understand what they were, that is when I could really start to work on who I was being and who I wanted to become. And heal everything that was attached to that story. Now, here we can look at our experiences and we can look at our stories as negative stories or positive. And those that are going to continue to narrate and continue to create shame or help us to release any of that negative feeling and emotion. I'll give you another example. And this example is essentially also from conversations that I've had with women where they have siblings, as most of us have a sibling, and they've gone through the same experience. The same things, they were hurt and they were abused in the same ways, and yet here is my client struggling and unable to get through and work through things and live the life that she wants to live. Meanwhile, her sibling has no problem, or at least how it appears on the outside, has no problem and is achieving and succeeding in all the aspects and all the important areas of her life. And my client is wondering, what is the difference? And the difference is the mindset. It's how is the stories that you're carrying. Are those stories that you're carrying and continue to carrying the ones that hold you back and limit you and remind you of things that you don't want to be reminded of, or keep telling you how bad and how unworthy you are? Or are those stories are at this point just simply stories from your past, and you know that they shaped you to become the most powerful woman, it taught you the most powerful lessons that they were meant to, and you applied those lessons as you learned them. Some of us take longer to learn the lessons than others. Essentially, that is the root of what I'm trying to say. Your sibling might have learned those lessons a lot quicker than you did. And it's not to say that you're slow. Absolutely not. It's to say that you were meant to learn and go through a deeper form of learning that lesson than your sibling did. And that you have a much deeper understanding, not just of the stories, but of yourself. And yourself in the relation and connection to those stories. And then that, in many cases, actually becomes becomes the medicine that you give others, that you help others with. That becomes your gift. While your sibling has a different path, has a different journey, and they weren't meant to go into the depth of the lessons as you are. They were meant to work on it in a different way and heal through them in a different way that to you might appear really simple and easy. And it's like, well, why can't I? Because you're not meant to. You got a different journey, you have a different life. You just came from the same womb, but that's about it. You're still different individuals, different entities. Even as twins, you're still different. And they have a different path. They have a different journey. They're meant to be doing different things. While you are the one that is going to make a different contribution to the world through the shit that you went through. So recognizing that your pain and your suffering has a purpose. And just because you don't know what it is does not mean it's not there. It just means that it's not time for you to know what it is yet, but it will come to you. And when it does, you will feel an enormous amount of relief and in this kind of state of OMG, it finally all makes sense and it clicks why I went through this and this and this and that, why things just kept happening, and now here I am sharing the medicine that I am with everyone that needs it. So that's what I would say with that. And when it comes to healing from shame, it can feel like a burden. Sometimes it's shame itself, it carries as a burden, and it impacts how you show up in the world, to the world, for the world as well. And it can and often does hold us back. Cindy says, thank you for this teaching. Oh, you're very welcome. I'm glad that there are things that are resonating with you as well. And I'd actually love to hear what those things are that are resonating with you. So it helps me to understand you and all the women in the group as well when it comes to today's topic. When it comes to releasing and healing our stories and not continuing to carry on that shame, embracing our past without that shame. Even though shame is a powerful feeling and emotion, it does not mean that we must continue to carry it like almost like a badge of honor sometimes. That's how it can feel sometimes. Or when I know there was a long period of my life where I was really battling with depression, and there was part of me that was unconscious. And then at one point I became conscious of it, of this part of myself that, to me, it was almost like I was carrying that badge of a survivor as a badge of honor that I've earned, that no matter what, that I went through a really difficult, challenging time, and this one time, another time, and it all compiled, and that caused me to go into the deep rest. This is what I refer to as depression, because it causes us to go into this deep rest that we can't just escape from, because the escape is through understanding what is happening inside of us. And what actually tends to happen is we start to realize and recognize that we are trying to be and showing up as this version of ourselves for our partners, another version for our friend, another version for our children, another version for our mother, our father, this friend, this coworker, that coworker, for our boss, for strangers. And we get tired and exhausted by trying to be someone for everyone instead of figuring out who we are at our core and recognizing and learning through recognition, this constant recognition, that we're not meant to be someone for everyone, because we're meant to be someone for ourselves and figure out who we are as an individual. And as we figure that out, we will find the people in our lives that will fit right in, and we get to be our true authentic self with every single person in our life, and we don't have to try or pretend. We don't have to walk on eggshells and be scared or uncomfortable of saying the wrong thing or stepping someone's toes or crossing someone's boundaries. That when you are yourself, those people that are meant to be for you and with you will find you. And it happens in a way that you don't see. It's a literal magnetic attraction where the right people will magnetically come to you. It's like a magnet. And you don't have to, like, with the magnets, they have to be close enough, which means in some ways, yeah, you got to be close enough, which means you need to know that you exist, basically. So once a magnet knows that the other magnet exists and you bring them close enough, boom, they connect. But if you put the magnet, let's say, upside down on the opposite way, you come close to that individual, that magnet, and then it push that person away. You try to bring it closer, pushes away, pushes away. So sometimes we don't realize or don't recognize that there are people in our life that we have now. I personally don't have those people anymore at this point, and when I do recognize that, because people do try to fit in still, but once I recognize that there's people that are the wrong people for me, I let them go. But where you find yourself being that magnet and trying to be someone for this person, and in return you're just pushing them away further and further and further away because you're trying to chase them. You gotta stop the chasing. That's how you repel things. You gotta find ways to attract and not repel. And the way that you actually attract, I know there are many ways, but it really does come down to the basic way. And this is where there's a lot of work that is involved in figuring out yourself. But the basic way is to know who you are, find your voice, find your truth, find the things that you like and don't like, figure out how you want to live your life, how you don't want to live your life, what boundaries need to be set in place, what boundaries are you okay with being crossed and not okay, and live your truth. Live as the most purest and most authentic version of yourself. And that is how the right people will come into your life. And so that would be the first, I guess, approach, is shifting to positive and working on yourself and recognizing that some of the stories that you're carrying are negative. And in order for you to rewrite them, you got to understand the story itself. If you are reading a book, and let's say you want to write your own book based on that book, in order for you to really understand what book are you going to be writing in relation to this book that you're reading, you need to read it in its entirety, understand it, and then you can rewrite it as you are, from the place of knowing who you are and from who you are. That's how it works. You cannot rewrite something without knowing what it is, without understanding. I'll use another example. I like to refer to our existence in our life as a tree. So if you're a tree, which in many ways you are, because your stories are your roots. And your roots can go as deep and far as they can, and then some of them are more on the surface level. Tree has different types of roots. Some are really strong while others aren't. Now, some of these things that you have experienced throughout your life have created some really strong, solid roots that are not serving you, that no longer benefit you, but yet they're still there. And in order for you to regrow that root, you need to take it out fully, which means, yes, you can try to cut it from the top, but the root itself, I'm going to use an example of a wisteria tree. Some of you might not know this. I learned because my mom had a wisteria tree where we grew up, in one of the homes that we grew up. And when it comes to wisteria tree, if you leave a little part of the root, it will grow a whole new tree. It will just continue growing and it'll spread. So you, as this wisteria tree, you can cut that root from the top, but the root itself is still there, and it is still connected to other roots, the healthy roots with the good stories and the good messages for you. So in order for you to really cut the root, you need to dig, you need to understand where this root is, where it's going, where it's coming from. I mean, where it's coming from, that's usually easy to tell because it's at the top, right? That is the first place you start, and then you go and then you dig as deep as you need to in order for you to get the whole infected root. When you dig deep enough, you really start to understand how this one root has been affecting you and the other healthy roots that make up you and your default programming in ways that are not so favorable. But as you're digging, that process, you're actually healing yourself. You're uncovering it. You're going deep within. You see the connections. You cut the connections. You disconnect it from the other ones. And then in the end, you pull the root up. Once you pull that root up and out, discard it, burn it, freeze it, set it ablaze, whatever it is that you want to do with it, physically, metaphorically, obviously speaking, this is where you now allow the space for a new root to take place that is, or potentially two roots from that one that you cut will take place and replace the space where the old one was. That's what healing is. And this is one of the reasons why many people avoid it, and like a plague that they feel that it is. But those that don't avoid it, they go and they heal it, and which means that once it's healed, once the new roots take place and grow and regrow, no one can shake you, no one can trigger you, no one can upset you through all the stories that were inside of this root, inside of this story within you. So I hope that makes sense with this example. And when it comes to healing, self-forgiveness is important. You gotta forgive yourself. If we're going back into the childhood, and let's use an example of myself, with that example that I used earlier with me losing my sister because I was responsible for her. I didn't even know what responsibility was. So I could have chosen to carry that story throughout my life and feel shame and feel guilt that I was such a bad sister, such an irresponsible person. And then on top of that, my parents were mean and hurtful and they just wanted to hurt me, whereas that is not the reality that I choose to see. Right? We do have options. We have more than one option. We just might be feeling or living unconsciously through our own individual viewpoint. And this is why it's important to talk and chat and get everybody else's viewpoints and understandings and helping us expand our own and start seeing things from more point of views, more perceptions, more perspectives than our own, which is limiting in many different ways. So I've learned, as I already said, every parent does the best they can. They have learned something, someone else has given them advice, tips and tricks and knowledge, and they apply because they believe that to be the best approach. Now, is it the actual truth and reality? Sometimes yes, sometimes no. In that example, honestly, I'm at a place in my life where I can gladly and happily say that yes, that was the right approach because it shaped me into a person who I am today. If I didn't experience that, I would have been a different person. That has helped me to become a more of an independent person where I fortunately and unfortunately learned to understand myself, to understand my feelings, my emotions, work through them on my own, and not trust and rely on those people in my life who were meant to keep me safe and protected, because that experience caused me to feel unsafe and unprotected, even though I know that was not the intention. But as a child, one that's how it shaped me to be. That made me who I am today. And I wouldn't change that for the world, but for my parents, they were coming from a place of love and protection and trying to help me learn a lesson that I won't forget, because this is how they've learned. And the ways that they also learned was 100 times worse than I did. So without going into their stories, what they've gone through was 100 times worse, because the advice, the tips and tricks, and the parenting styles and education about parenting, it gotten better with each generation, which means that it was worse and worse and worse as we go down the line of each generation. So I learned a lot from that experience, and I learned what kind of a parent I want to be. And as I mentioned, some of the things that I've learned, I applied. And then through application, I learned that this wasn't right for me. Didn't feel right. And then when I went down that rabbit hole, digging and figuring out why didn't it feel right for me, when it helped me to become the person that I am today, because it wasn't me. And then the other questions of, okay, what kind of parent do I want to be? How do I want to show up for my kids? And what am I learning? And what do I want to apply from what I learned? Because just because you learn something does not mean it's going to be right for you or for your family. There are other things that I've learned how to raise kids that weren't for me. And in order for me to understand, I needed to put it into practice. And I'm sharing it because you're going to be learning a lot of things as you go through your healing journey, and as you grow spiritually. You're going to learn a lot of different things. And in order for you to know which one is for you, you got to apply. You got to try it on for size and see if it is for you. And also recognize that no matter how old you are, you're still young and you're still a child in the eyes of the universe. And you will continue to learn and you'll continue to make mistakes. But mistakes are not meant to be seen and viewed as a negative thing or negative interpretation of a word mistake. It's meant to be viewed as, okay, well, that didn't work. What's next? What's next? What's next? Like a scientist. A scientist doesn't give up and quit and say, oh, that's it didn't work, this is failure, I'm gonna try something different. No, they try one thing, try another, until they find what works. And then when they find what works, then they go, well, why did that work? And at the same time, there's things that didn't work, they go, well, why didn't that work? What could have I done differently? And then they put that into the equation. That brings them closer to the answer. When it comes to forgiveness, there are some practical steps that you can take, which is acknowledge the story without judgment, own up to your past mistakes for the painful experiences. See what you did wrong. In my example with losing my sister, I wasn't responsible. And it's also, yes, I was a child, yes, I was young, but that was my opportunity to learn and practice being responsible, and also building a friendship with my sister. And I didn't do those things because they weren't in my awareness field. So I did to the best of my knowledge and my ability. And then I paid the price and I learned. And also my parents learned, right? Did they trust me again with my sister? Yes, just in different ways. And also acknowledging that as you're acknowledging the story, don't acknowledge it and completely blame yourself. You can see the part or the role that you played so you can understand what's in it for you. And also, you can say things like, this is what happened, and I'm ready to move forward without holding on to it. Honestly, I think this is probably more than enough for today. Cindy says, it all resonates like a magnet. Thank you. Right message at the right time. Much, and then much gratitude to you. You're very welcome, and thank you for hopping on, and thank you for sharing and commenting as well. And I'm glad to hear that the magnet example helped and made sense. And for some of you, if that didn't make sense, that's okay as well, because sometimes we need a moment for things to settle to make sense. And at the same time, for some of you, might be different examples that would be more resonating ones. And when it comes to forgiving others, like I said, not everybody deserves or requires our forgiveness. It isn't always required, but you gotta also reassure yourself that not everyone deserves or earns your forgiveness, because forgiveness is not something that you just give away freely. Some people must earn it and prove to you that they are worthy of your forgiveness. And if not, then that's okay. The most important part is that you are not holding on to pain, shame, or resentment through the stories that you're carrying, that you release and let go, and in some ways forget. Because remembering oftentimes can cause that pain and suffering, or continue to feed that dark part of you. While in other cases, forgiving is possible and it is the right thing to do, because you know that that person is not that kind of a person, and that they themselves made a mistake and they are remorseful. While there are people who are simply not remorseful because they don't see the wrong of what they did. And this is where you just, okay, I get it. You can be empathetic, you can be understanding that they're simply not there with their mental awareness and with the empathetic understanding where you are. And it's okay to leave them where they are, because it's not your job or your place to get them out of there or help them understand. Sometimes you can explain the pain and the suffering someone caused you, and they simply won't understand. They'll just look at you like you got 3 or 5 eyes. Meanwhile, the things that they've done are just unspeakable and unforgettable, but they don't see it in that way. So, and this is why I refer to those people as narcissists, or more of the people that have a lot more narcissistic qualities, that lack self-awareness and empathy at the depth of at the depth that others can, like yourself. And you can be empathetic, you can be understanding of them, but not necessarily forgive them for what they've done. In many cases, forgiveness, or in some cases, forgiveness is one of those things that must be earned. Um, yeah, I can't think of anything else to add, to mention, and just the stories, the messages that you carry, the way that you view yourself, the uh, the weaknesses that you believe you have, you can also rewrite them and understand them and see them as strengths instead of weaknesses. So, that's all I wanted to share for today. I am now hungry, and that is taking my focus away. So I must go and feed my belly, and we'll see each other next Thursday at 11:45 a.m. Eastern Time for another one of these Get Your Shit Together weekly live guidance with myself, Yana Kasperczak, where I'll go live for another topic that has been brought to my attention from all of you beautiful ladies in the group, with something that you want me to cover and talk on or about from my perspective, from my experience, and from others that I have learned and acquired some understandings and perspectives and wisdoms from. So that's all I want to say and share. Have an amazing the rest of your day. And also, as now I'm wrapping up, I realize that if you are ready to really heal yourself and heal your stories and heal your interpretations and the blocks that are holding you imprisoned in your mind or in your body, then I want to personally invite you to reach out to me, and we can chat about how I can help you get there quicker, faster, and easier with the least amount of pain and suffering. And not just get there, but stay there, because everything that I do and I offer and all the ways that I can help, I always focus on sustainability and not a temporary fix, because a temporary fix is temporary. And I I like to say that I'm in the business of putting myself out of business, meaning that my goal is to help the women heal and uncover themselves and build their life or business and or career on their own as quickly as possible, so that way they're not relying on me or on anyone. And that's how I approach everything that I do, is to give you in some videos it isn't temporary fix, but a permanent solution through all the things and all the programs that we offer that can help you to get to that place that you want to get, into the version of yourself that you want to get. So now I'm done. Thank you for being on here. Thank you for listening. As always, I look forward to hearing from each and every one of you, and hearing perhaps what was your biggest takeaway, your biggest aha moment from today. And maybe there's something that you can do about it, an action that you can take that will solidify your realization, your aha moment. And until we chat again, until we see each other again next time, have an amazing rest of your day and weekend.